Hi guys, so I had an interesting request was to go through a PPL flight test scenario. So PPL, it's a private pilot's license, and that consists generally of 50 hours of flying time made up of different components, covering the basic lessons, and cross-country flying, and demonstration of a variety of different tasks you need to be able to safely perform to become qualified as a pilot, where you can hold a license which allows you to carry passengers but not for hire or reward. So you can't do it for a job. For that you need a commercial pilot's license. So the PPL is generally the first major milestone in a pilot's career. I did my PPL flight test in 1999, so just over, what's that, 21 years ago. And so yeah, it's been a long time. So to be honest, I've only got vague memories of doing it now, and I'll try and remember what I can as we go. So I'll break this video up into 2 or 3 parts because there's really a lot to cover. So there's a test guide. I'm going to do this in New Zealand, and just basically I'll base it around sort of my familiarity with the New Zealand way of doing things. So this will differ from, say, EASA in Europe or the FAA in the United States, and any other sort of countries which have their own national requirements. So don't take this as gospel. This is essentially a version of a PPL flight test. And as I say, I haven't really done a lot of research. I'm just going to jump in and run through the exercises. Now, a couple of things to point out really. When the examiner conducts a test like this, yes, they are looking for accurate execution of quite a long list of different test items. But more than just that, they're looking to see, is this person safe flying an aeroplane? What's their decision making like? Their what we call airmanship. So that's just what's their knowledge like? Do they feel comfortable and confident in the aircraft? Their understanding of where the aircraft is in space in relation to other things, the weather. So situational awareness. These are really important factors. Do I feel comfortable that this person knows what's going on and is adequately prepared to and competent enough to make safe decisions should situations change? So a big part of this, which this terminology wasn't used back when I was training, but it's definitely come into vogue in recent years, is called threat and error management. So even at PPL level, understanding threats and how they could be mitigated is an important factor. So we'd feed this back into airmanship in more pragmatic terms. So in terms of a flight test, you know that the candidate is going to be probably a bit nervous, right? Because it's the first time their skills have really been put to the test outside of the training environment or a simulated check flight, which you do prior to being released to actually conduct the flight test. So generally you would never have flown with this examiner before, so you know that they're watching your every move. So that in itself is a threat. You might do everything perfectly, but just the nerves of the day could mean that you underperform, and that's generally the case. So the examiner needs to know that in spite of any nerves you might feel, that you're still going to be a competent pilot, because if you're nervous in a test environment on a nice day like this, then how are you going to perform when the weather's poor or you've got passengers who might be uncomfortable and so on? And there'll also be another key focus here is your lookout. So flying in VFR, visual flight conditions, it's really important that we see and avoid other traffic. And so having a good awareness, not being fixated on your instruments or your charts and bits of paper in the cockpit, but keeping your head up and looking around all the time, so you know not only where you are but where other people are, and building that picture, whether it's through the radio or just looking out the window. Super important stuff. So these are the key points that the examiner is going to be looking at, which are beyond just the individual test items that you're performing. So we're in the Cessna 152 here. This is a very standard training aircraft. It's what I did my PPO and CPL flight test in, as a matter of fact. Now we've got much more modern aircraft with glass cockpits and everything, but taking it back old school. So we're at NZFI Fielding Airport. I've done a couple of flights here in the past, and this is where I conducted both my PPO and CPL flight tests from. So after we've done a briefing in the briefing room before we get to the aircraft, where the examiner is going to outline to us what we can expect to fly, we're going to talk about performance and mass and balance and general items for what to be he'll be observing, or he or she will be observing during the test. Then they're going to watch us do a pre-flight of the aircraft. We'll talk about fuel management and various items. So we assume we've done all of that, and we jump in the airplane. And the first thing, so we're imagining basically, even though the examiner wants us to demonstrate certain exercises, we still have to treat them as though they are a passenger, and we are the pilot in command for this flight. Okay, so that means things like doing a safety and emergency briefing in the aircraft. So even in a small plane like a 152, there's only 2 doors. Basically, you're going to get in and out the same way that you got in, and the person on the right, they can really only get out that door. They're hardly going to be able to climb across my side, but in any case, we still do that briefing. So we talk about how you open the door and lock it. So there's the door handle there. We talk about any safety equipment we might have, which could probably be a fire extinguisher, which can't see one, but there should be one in here somewhere. And basically where the ELT is, so emergency locator transmitter, that's normally in the back of one of these. So you talk about that, and maybe even where the battery switch is here as well. If you were not able to get them out, then perhaps that could be something that you'd want to mention as well. And how the seatbelt works. So that's generally that. These things have got ashtrays, which is quite funny. Wouldn't expect too many people would use the ashtrays these days. Okay, so then we'd get on. Now, we might have a paper checklist. I prefer, or my training was really just to memorize all your checks, which I probably can't remember that well these days. The other thing that you'd want to have done is got the aircraft prepared. So when I turn the battery switch on here, I've gone to the trouble of setting up the frequencies that I'm going to need, so I don't have to fiddle around with that. So I've got fielding or manual 2 traffic set 1241 on box 1 or com 1 here, and then standby is Palmerston North Tower. Now we're not going to use Palmerston North Tower, but that's just set up in case we might need it. We've got guard on com 2 to monitor that, and here's the ATIS frequency for Palmerston North, because fielding is an uncontrolled airport. And we're not doing anything with instruments really, but we've got the Palmerston North VOR and Haki VORs nearby as well. So it's just good management to sort of have everything set up there. We've got our transponder on standby squawking 1200. And a lot of the regular aircraft do have assigned or allocated squawk codes, but we'll just call it 1200 as the standard VFR squawk code in New Zealand. So we'd run through our checks. So the fuel cock is on there, and we've got a mixture full rich. We just prime the throttle by having probably 3 pumps on the throttle. There's no fuel flow gauge, so really all we can do is you'd actually feel that. That's probably enough. And we just crack the throttle a touch. We can put our beacon on, check the prop area is clear. So this is where the airmanship comes in. We're looking around, making sure there's no one around. There's a couple of fellas over there, but they're clear. We might even shout clear prop if we're really excited about it. And we'll go to both, and we crank the engine, and she comes to life. Idling initially 1000 RPM. Look for oil pressure in the green. Check our alternator on, and as we do so, we can see we've got our voltage light on here. We'll look for that to go out and a charge to be indicated, which it is, so that's good news. And now we just keep that idling at 1000 RPM. Our radios are on, that's fine. We can see we've got about half fuel. So I'm going to run through a long list of exercises that we'll do in this and the subsequent videos. So essentially we need to demonstrate quite a bit of stuff. So aside from just those general overview things I just mentioned, we're going to be looking for a short field takeoff. So this is where we take off in a simulated. So the runway here is about 1,000 meters long, but we would simulate taking off in as short a distance as we can. We can see on the outside we saw the windsock. Give me a second. Okay, there's the windsock. So we can see it's favouring runway 28 going in this westerly direction. So already that's our situational awareness. We know 28 is the active runway, even though it's not controlled. That's the runway we'd be using. Okay, so we'll be taking off in this direction, and we're going to simulate getting off the ground. Getting airborne is the shortest distance possible. So for that, we'll need to be full power before we release the brakes, and we'll use flaps 10 for takeoff. And when we get airborne, we'll be climbing out initially at our best angle of climb speed. So this is to avoid obstacles close in, and so we'd call that something like 55 knots, and or maybe about 55 we'll call it. And then once we're clear of obstacles, so let's say it's these trees, we'll go to our best rate of climb speed, so we'll call that 65 knots. And once we're clear of those, also up through 500 feet, so we can see we're at 200 feet on the ground here, so at 700 feet our nominated climb speed will be 70 knots. And we have a tolerance for all of our speeds and headings and things for a PPL flight test is plus or minus 5 knots. So if we say to the examiner, my nominated climb speed is 70 knots, he's looking to see that we maintain between 65 and 75 knots. Okay, so we'll do a short field takeoff and climb out, and then we'll do what's called a simulated engine failure after takeoff. So now the examiner would close the throttle, and we would have to pick a paddock to land in. So we really need to do that within, say, 15, 20 degrees either side of the nose, left or right. So he'll be wanting to see that we immediately get the nose down to establish our best glide speed of around 60 knots, that we maybe do some trouble checks, which would be fuel on or change tanks if we have more than one tank, but we just have one fuel cock here. Fuel's on, mixture is full, rich ignition is on both, and then we will close the throttle and or check for power, I should say. So those are called trouble checks, and that's really just the main things. We don't have time to really do much else other than make sure we haven't forgotten anything dumb, like we didn't turn the fuel cock on, because you can get airborne. There's enough fuel in the lines that if we turned it off, maybe the engine runs for a few minutes before it can uses that fuel. Maybe our mixture has slid out with the vibration, the friction wasn't high enough, or perhaps we only had one mag on after a run up, we didn't go back to both, so we had a loss of power or something like that. So it's really checking the immediate things and then setting up for a glide. Once he's comfortable that we've got a good paddock, we've established our glide, that we know what we're doing, he'll say fine, and then we'll apply power and we'll climb away from that. And so we won't go too low, and then we continue to the training area, which we'll do just to the north here. Then we'll move into some straight and level flight. He just wants to see us maintain straight and level flight within 5 degrees of a nominated heading and plus or minus 100 feet. And our speed, of course, will be cruise speeds, something like 90, 95 in this. Then we'll do medium turns, so that's using these indications here on our AH, that's 30 degrees. And then we can do steep turns, which will be more than 30 degrees, but less than 60, so 45. And again, he just wants us to see us maintaining our altitude within plus or minus 100 feet. We do compass turns. We'll talk about those separately. We'll do some stalls, so we'll just do a clean stall, just power off, flaps up. Then we'll do basically what we call a takeoff and a landing configuration stall. Key thing for these is we need to recover above 2,500 feet above the ground. And we also need to maintain a good lookout, so we'll do our Hazel and Hell checks for those. So the 3 stalls will be clean. A takeoff stall, we'll call it, which is say flaps, we'll call it flaps 20 actually, and we'll do power on for this one. And so we'll see a wing drop, and then we'll do a landing stall, which will be full flaps and power idle. So he's just going to want to see good, excuse me for saying he could easily be a woman doing a flight test as an examiner, and they're going to want to see us recover within 50 feet and not below 2,500 feet AGL, and generally managing the aircraft well. So from the stalls we'll move into we'll do a precautionary landing. So if the weather was poor and we had to land perhaps, then they want to see us set up for a outfield landing. And then the big one is the forced landing without power. So that's like the engine failure after takeoff with picking a paddock, selecting our how we're going to approach that field, and then executing all of that and some checks along the way, maybe making a radio call, briefing our passengers, and generally our airmanship, how do we manage an engine failure. And we'll start that from around 3,000 feet above the ground. From that we recover into a brief bit of low flying, which we can do in the bad weather configuration. We'll fly at 70 knots with flaps 20, so that would just give us a bit more time in poor weather, and then we'll make our way back to the airport here, and we do a bunch of circuits. So the first one we'd do is just a normal landing with a short field, a normal approach with a short field landing, and then we can actually backtrack. I think we'll do we may well do a touch and go off that, but I think for the short field, actually we'll finish the thing with a short field. So we'll do a normal landing with a touch and go, and we'll climb out, continue that circuit, then we'll do a flapless landing, and then we would do the glide approach. So that's basically the end of the forced landing without power, but the glide all the way to the ground, and somewhere in there we might do a go round as well. And yeah, that's about it. So you can see there's a whole bunch of stuff, so we're not going to do it all in this one video. We'll break it up. I've already spent too long talking, but this is the deal. It's a PPL flight test. There's a lot to cover, a lot to demonstrate. So from here we'll just get ourselves underway. I'll try and simulate the radio calls as best I can, but please don't take this as an example of how to do a PPL flight test, because I'm doing this in real time as we go. All right, so taxi lights on, fielding traffic. Delta Mike Oscar is parking stand 9. We'll be taxiing for runway 28. So parking brake goes off. We have a good look around. I'll turn my track IR on here. And we want to verbalize what we're doing, so the examiner, basically, he knows what we're thinking. Okay, so we can't get marks for thinking about things that he's not aware that we're actually doing. So we have a good look around, and we want to check our brakes, which are working. And away we go. So brakes are checked. Okay. Now he or she is going to keep pretty quiet for the most part because they're really just there to observe. So there's no idle chit chat. And if you start striking up a conversation with the examiner, then they actually might find that a sign that you're not really paying attention as well. So you might be nervous and think you can try and calm your own nerves by having a bit of a chat, but the examiner's not going to give you much. So you better just to keep it professional and verbalize what you're thinking. Probably not the fact that you're absolutely bricking it right now, but more about that you're aware of the environment, because this is how we demonstrate situational awareness, is by telling the examiner what's on our mind in terms of the world. So I'm looking out for any traffic. I haven't heard any on the radio frequency, so I'm comfortable that we're the only aircraft flying around here at the moment. We can see it's a nice clear day. The clouds are quite high with that bit of a westerly wind. So we can see there's a run-up pad here. That's actually the hold short line, but there is another yellow line, so we'll use the yellow line up here as our hold short line, and we're going to turn into wind for our run-up. So we just use all the space on the run-up pad and applying the brakes. Okay, so we're pointing more or less into wind. Okay, so we'll set the parking brake again. There it goes. Okay, so look, we've got all temperature and pressure is in the green. Idle at 1,000. There we go. So you can see the Amity is actually not working below 1,000 RPM anyway. Okay, so we're going to go up to 1,700 RPM. All we can really do, it's a fixed pitch propeller, so there's no prop control. So we're just going to go to 1,700 RPM here. Prop area was clear. And we check the carpet first. We should just get a slight decrease in RPM, which we do. That just shows us that that is working. And now we check our mags. Should be no more than 150 drop. Back to both. It's a bit of parallax error from looking across the cockpit. Right mag, back to both. It's good. T's and P's are still in the green. Come back to idle. Carpet goes out at idle, and we're just making sure that the engine doesn't stop with carpet at idle. We should see a small increase, which we don't, and I've actually reported that as a bug, which no one probably cares about. Is Amity charging again. Okay, run-up's complete. We'll do our pre-takeoff check. So trim is set in the takeoff range. Okay, trim set, mixture full rich. Fuel cock is on. Flaps are set at 10. Ignition's on both. Instruments checked. T's and P's in the green. And our controls. Full, free and correct. So we do a stir the porridge in a little airplane like 152. Bigger aircraft you tend to do these separately, and pedals left and right. And hatches and harnesses are hatches, so that's the doors are all secure and locked, and our seat belts are on. We check with our examiner here. You all secure? Yes, all secure. Okay, fielding traffic, Delta Mike Oscar enters to backtrack lineup, runway 28. Brakes go back off. And we're going to do our turn around here to the left, and this allows us to have a good look out. Make sure the approach seat is clear before we enter the runway. Okay, it's all good. We can see the runway is clear as well. So we're entering. Strobes on, landing lights on. Transponder to Alt for line up. Okay, so as I mentioned, this will be a short field takeoff. So basically we stand on the brakes at the end of the runway. We'll go to full power, check our T's and P's are in the green. So temperature and pressure, that is, and release the brakes. We're looking to rotate as early as we can without stalling the aircraft, and then setting an initial climb attitude of VY, so that's the best angle of climb, sorry, VX, best angle of climb, and we'll call that 55 knots. And so we use that to clear any close-in obstacles, and we'll do that until we pass about 100 feet or so, or 200 feet, so around 400. We'll then go to VY, which we'll call 65 knots, and then we'll do that up till 500 feet. Lower the nose, we'll raise the flaps and go on our merry way at 70 knots. Fitting traffic, Delta Mike Oscar lines up and rolls, runway 28, vacating to the north. All set, all set. Alright, here we go. So, brakes on, go to full power. T's and P's are in the green. Wind is more or less calm, a couple of knots from the left. Brakes released. Keep it straight, holding a little bit of back pressure. Let's keep the weight off the nose. And looking for the airspeed indicator. There it goes. Oh, terrible. Okay, we're airborne, so 55 knots initially. It's a bit steep. Okay, so there's 55. Pretty good performance. So we'll go for 65 knots. So that was VX. Now we're going to VY. Looking for 65 knots. Here it is. Okay, wings level. Keeping that lookout going. We're all clear. Okay, looking for 65. Trimming for 65. Okay, and at this point the instructor, we're coming to 500 feet. Looking for 70 knots. Instructor, engine fails. What do? So first thing we do is lower the nose. Okay, we're trimming back, going for that yellow paddock in the front. Fuel, mixture, ignition, power, no power. Okay, flaps 20. There's my paddock. You'll be like, okay, happy with that. Go around. Alright. Smoothly through to full power. Wings level. Establish the climb. Go back to flaps 10. 70 knots for the climb out. Flaps up. Clear on the left. Turning right for the north. About 20 degrees for the turn. Okay, nominated climb speed is 70 knots. T's and P's are still in the green. Alright, so the field was relatively short, but you can see we don't have a lot of time. So just what's important is you make a decision. Okay, that's what he's looking for. Is a good, positive, assertive decision. You went, oh, I'm not sure, left this one. While you're thinking, you're falling out of the sky and you're all going to die. So just make a decision, commit to it, and that's what they want to see. Good, assertive, positive decision making. So trimming for that climb of 70 knots. I'm a little bit fast. Okay, and keep my lookout going. Heading traffic, Delta Mike Oscar was airborne 28, passing 1,200 feet, and we'll be vacating to the north via Cheltenham. Okay, don't worry too much about the local landmarks. Obviously, you've done all your training in this area, so you know the points you're going to be telling people about. So this is my sort of home area, so I know these places pretty well, but this is Arua River, I think, and Cheltenham's just a little village up here. It's really the intersection of the roads. There's Bolton Road, and Cheltenham's just on the corner. 1,500 feet. Oops, that's our maximum altitude because of Hakia's airspace above us, so probably already failed the flight test by busting airspace. Okay, so we level off here. Now the examiner wants to see us demonstrate straight and level flight. So it's plus or minus 5 degrees of desired track and 100 feet. So I'm leveling off. I need to trim forward. I'm still too high. So I'll start bringing that power back to 2400 RPM. And we're just listening for the tone change. Remember the tone change of the engine. And I'm just descending back to 1500 feet. Trimming her out, trimming her out. Okay, it's not too bad. Oh, it's going pretty fast. This is a high performance 152. Okay, good. So we can see we're following the road. So we're just going to stay on the right hand side of the road, keeping a good lookout going. And at this point here, as we settle into this little bit of a cruise, the examiner might ask us a couple of questions like, what's the... might ask us something like, what's the VA speed for the aircraft? And you'll say, and you'll look down here and you'll cheat. And it'll say 104, and you'll say, 104 knots. And I'll say, okay, good. And then they'll say, what's the flap limit speed? And you'll go, what's that top of the white arc? It's about 85 knots. And they'll say, what is VNE? And you'll say, it's the maximum speed the aircraft can go. Okay. And what is it? Oh, it's about 150 knots. Okay. So they'll just test your knowledge of the airplane in any dead space. So really, there's always something on your mind. Keeping that lookout going. T's and P's in the green. It's good. Okay. My target speed altitude was 1,500 feet, so not allowed below 14. So I've already lost 50 feet. So keep an eye on that. Cheltenham's up here on the corner. All right. So we did our engine failure after takeoff. So they're going to want to see. Still descending. He's going to want to see our turns. Okay, so while we're waiting, you might say, okay, give me a medium turn. So you're on heading of, let's call that 275. Give me a medium turn to the right onto a heading of north. Okay, this is the Boys College down here, Māori Boys College, Halteporta. Alright, so we'll be looking, we're all clear to the left. Manual 2 traffic, Delta Mike Oscar is a half a mile south of Colleton, or east of Cheltenham, 1,500 feet, operating in the area. Okay, so we're at 100 knots, 1,500 feet, we're all clear. So I'm going to start the medium turn. So basically we're rolling into the 30-degree angular bank. And just keeping the nose up so we don't descend, maintaining 1,500 feet. Okay, there's the medium turn. Now I'm descending. Okay, there's north, rolling out. Okay, just back to west, please. Okay, all clear to the right. Keep the nose up, 30 degrees back the other way. We shouldn't need any power changes here. Okay. Good, maintaining altitude's good. Coming up on west. Okay, roll out. Very good, still at 1,500 feet. Alright, so we've demonstrated medium turns briefly. Then we say, okay, can we see a steep turn? So this will be more than 30 degrees, less than 60. So let's just go for the middle of this one, so about 45. And then he'll say, well, just keep us coming to the north here, but you can do a steep turn around to east and then back to west. Okay, whichever way you want to go. Okay, I'll go left first. We're all clear. All clear. T's and P's in the green. All good. Okay, so you want to make sure you're in trim before you start it. So you set yourself up. And we might need a little bit more power in this, so we'll go around to the left. All clear. So you want to get into the turn quickly and then just let the nose settle and just hold the back pressure to keep that picture looking the same on the horizon. And around we go there south. So that's what you want to do. You can just adjust your back pressure east. Okay, rolling out. All clear. Okay, back around to the right. So you can see the picture's different now. The nose is slightly below the horizon. Okay, bit of back pressure to keep it up. Maintaining height, we're good, it's through south. Okay, not too steep, good. There's west, rolling out. Okay, very nice, thank you. Can you please continue your climb to 3,000 feet for me? No problem, so power, full power, adjust the attitude. And what's your nominated climb speed? 70 knots. Okay, trimming for 70 knots. Okay, all good. So we can see some aircraft or an aircraft way up in the distance there. It's not going to affect us. There's the road there, so we just want to stay on the east of the road, so we'll keep that going too fast, so we want 70 knots. And over to traffic, Delta Mike Oscar is operating now 2 miles to the northwest of Cheltenham, passing 2,000 feet, remaining in the area. So we'll just climb on north. Did you say you're climbing at 70 knots? Yes, I did, sorry, getting there. Okay, so we're on north, trimming for 70 knots, passing 2,300 feet. Keep that lookout going. There's the school. Okay, so we'll just keep operating somewhere around this area here. 75 knots. So we need to be within 5 knots of outside speed, coming up on 2,500 feet. Okay, so the turns were good. So the next exercise will be the stalls. So remember, we need to recover by 2,500 feet AGL, and it was 200 feet on the ground at fielding, and it's slightly higher here. So we'll call it 400 feet, let's call it 500 feet. So we need to be at 3,500. Let's see, so that means if the ground's 500 feet above sea level, then we need to be recovered by 2,500 feet. Then we can't go below 3,000. So we'll climb to 3.5, and that gives us 500 feet to play with. And once we enter the stall, we need to be recovered within 50 feet. So maybe a good lookout. T's and P's are still in the green, coming through 3,000 feet. So we start thinking about our stall sequence. There's a bit of cloud there, so we're going to say, yeah, I can see some cloud there, so I'm going to need to keep well clear of that. Good, good, yes, thanks. So you can see we've got situational awareness of the weather. And we need to also keep in mind that after this, we've got our engine failure. So we're looking around thinking, all right, where's a good paddock? I want to pick my paddock in advance, okay, because I know I'm going to get the engine failure. So you want to just maneuver the aircraft so that you've pretty much got your paddock already selected, and the best as you can that you are able to use that one as you get to it. So that's another bit of SA really. Alright, there's 3,500 feet. Okay, watch out for this cloud. If you fly into cloud in a flight test, you are going to fail your flight test. So we'll just have to keep to the south of this cloud. So pitchy, you can see it wobbling around a lot. So I'm thinking that these paddocks here look pretty good for our engine failure, so that's what I'm keeping in mind. So we'll just want to use that as a landmark. Okay, there's 3.5, so we'll level off here. Yeah, this cloud's right at our altitude. That's actually kind of tricky. So we want to stay in this area. This forest is a good landmark. This bend in the river as well. Okay, we're a bit high, so let's come back to 3,500 feet. Hey, sorry sir, I'm just manoeuvring around these clouds to make sure we've got plenty of room for our stall exercise. Okay, no problem, just don't go into them. Yep. Alright, so we do our Hazel check. So height is, we can recover by 2,500 feet, yes. And my nominated entry altitude for the stalls is 3,500 feet. Airframe, first one we'll do is clean stall, but it'll be flaps up with idle power. Security, the cockpit is secure, no loose items. Hatches and harnesses are secure. Engine, T's and P's are in the green, so we've just brought the power back here to let the engine temperature stabilise after that relatively long climb. Location, okay, so we're not over any built up areas. There's a few farmhouses and things which we'll be well clear of. And lookout, so we're just doing a clearing turn. I think we'll do this first stall on a heading of north. Okay, there's the paddocks I'm using for forced landing, so that's all good. So we'll keep that turn going to north. Try and get us level at 3.5. I'm not doing a very good job of that. And we'll start that power coming back. So carpet goes on initially. Okay, clean stall. We'll call entry at 3,400 feet, save me having to climb. We've passed through north, so entry heading just for this cloud we'll make it 310. Okay, so we're trimming power to idle, now maintaining 3,400 feet, heading is 310. We'll recover at the nose drop. So we're standing by for the stall warning. Here it goes. Okay. Come on. Airplanes just don't stall in the sim. Alright, let's call that the stall. Full power. Okay, so we're at 3,200 feet, but you know, I had to just leave it in the stall because it just doesn't stall. You should get a clean brake in the aircraft, in the real aircraft. You will, in fact, get a clean brake. Okay, I left my carpet on, so that's a bit of as long as I've picked it up. Sorry, carpet was on. So this time we'll climb to 3,500 feet. Now we just do height 3,500 feet. Airframe, this time we'll go for landing stall, so full flaps. Engine, T's and P's in the green. Location, so we'll come back here with a clearing turn to the left, maintaining 3,500 feet. And lookout is good. Okay, there's my paddocks. There's the block. Okay, so we'll just do this one on a heading of 130. Oh, going so slow. Alright, a bit slow in that turn. Okay, power is coming off. Carpet will leave in. Stall warning. Okay, call the stall entry height. It's buffeting. Stall. Okay, there it goes. 3,400 feet. Full power. Flaps coming up. Go to flaps 10 initially. Yeah, there's no way I can recover that within 50 feet. Flaps up. Okay, we'll keep the climb going to 3,500 feet. So the next one we'll do is a power on stall. So not too bad. It's just a bit hard to do them accurately because the aircraft just doesn't perform that well. So height, climb back to 3,500 feet. Airframe. Okay, this will be a flaps 20 stall with power on. So we'll go flaps 10 initially. Engine, T's and P's, yeah, still pretty good. Location. Okay, we'll just do this one on our heading now. It looks like heading a 115 or 105. And lookout. Okay, we're still all clear. We'll call that heading 110. Just make a radio call. There's a bit of turbulence here too. Matter 2 traffic, Delta Mike Oscar is operating 3 miles to the northeast of Cheltenham at 3,500 feet for approximately 10 minutes. Okay, we've just gained a little bit of height there. So set flaps 20. I'm just going to go to about 1700 RPM for the power on stall. And we're just going to hold this, gain a bit of height with the flap. Goes 50 knots. I think it'll just sit there actually. So we're never going to stall. So we'll just reduce the power a bit. 1500, its power's come back. I'll put some power back on. Yeah, pretty hard to do these properly. Alright, here we go. It's getting there. Try and keep those wings level. Stall warning. So we should see a wing drop here. Come on. Okay, there's the wing drop. So right rudder, ailerons neutral, full power, and recover. Flaps up. Alright, good. Okay, just level off there, thanks. Okay, we'll level off at 3,300 feet. Let's come back to 2,300 RPM. Alright, not too bad. So watching the cloud, start the right turn, just do a clearing turn, no problem at all. And I'll use this opportunity to try and find my paddock. Okay, there it is. Alright, so the next thing we'll do is our forced landing. So